what's up, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. Today I have a great guest, Colten Johnson, a professional engineer working for a company called Flint Engineering as the principal engineer. He's very active on LinkedIn. I want to talk about his experience with LinkedIn, but also his own journey to becoming a structural engineer and working as a principal now. He also is the founder of a site called PE for Free, and he runs his own podcast there as well. Has a lot of great information for young engineers that are starting their own journey into this world of civil engineering and helping them also with their PE prep and all that jazz. So it's good stuff. Colten Johnson's going to be coming up right after this. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview, and it's a great conversation. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, Colten, we're rocking and rolling. Thanks for joining me on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast.
Hey, Isaac, thanks for having me, man. It's been a long time. Been seeing your stuff for a while and excited to get to be on now and to just sit down with you and talk. So it's a little different being on this side of the window.
I know you've got a podcast rolling. You're very active, I think, on LinkedIn. You're doing some cool stuff. So we wanted to kind of bring you on and chat about what's going on in your world. I usually start these off, though, just, I would love to know how you found yourself into civil engineering. What was that path like for you? And what are you doing today?
Yeah, so my background is formative in that I've been doing construction since I was 12, middle school. Yeah, I had a local contractor, family friend. He's like, hey, I need a strong back. Do you want to come help me with some construction? And I was like, sure, yeah, you pay me $12 an hour. Great. And so I spent my summers lugging 9-foot tall concrete forms for basements, would do morning weights and training, and then, go lift, do construction all day, roofing, trim, building, framing, all of it. And at the end of the day, you're just like, and I think about it now and I'm like, holy smokes, I could last a day and I'd be toast now. But my dad and grandpa sat me down and were like, hey, what are you going to do after high school? And I was like, I'll probably just do this. And they're like, do you want to do this when you're 40? And that was the first time I had to take a step back and be like, maybe the labor side isn't the best part for me. I'm not. And they're like, well, you could be an engineer or you could design what people are building. And so that's what got me started in engineering, thinking, okay, that's interesting. But I was totally into sports, football and wrestling and track. And so I was like, I'll go do football somewhere, or I'll go do track somewhere. And my junior year, I broke my wrist in wrestling and I broke my leg in football. And so I got sidelined just immediately the whole year. And I'll call that the divine intervention of God's hand saying, hey, sports is probably not for you. And that's when I was like, okay, so, engineering is stable. It's very predictable. The university I went to had 100% placement in your field of study.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, that had been going on for, I think, a decade was their history. So that's what got me, into engineering. And then once I got into school, I was architectural engineering. So I had to specify mechanical, electrical, plumbing, or structural. And this is my bias, but to me, structural is the most important. We do big things and save people's lives or cost them lives. And so I'm I've always been a very intense person. I want to do the most important thing. And so that's what stuck out to me. I'm guessing that's why I picked structural. But yeah, so now I am the CEO, principal guy that is in charge of a new engineering firm based out of Kansas, doing structural engineering for industrial facilities, a little bit of commercial, and some construction support stuff.
That's awesome. Could we back up a little bit? So when you went through school, you passed the FE while in school?
Nope.
No, after school.
Yes. That one was a fun one.
What was that like for you?
So I got, I was in the Midwest. My wife and I, I was married my last year of school, and we were like, let's get out of the Midwest. Let's go. We got a wild hair. Let's go do something crazy. So I had an Excel sheet, and I just started making a list of all the structural engineering firms on each of the coasts. And I would email the contact, fill out the form, do whatever. And then a week later, I'd call them. And pro tip for anybody that's looking at that, getting somebody on the phone is exponentially better than sending somebody an email. And the job that I got out there was because I called somebody, and the project manager kind of running that division answered, or I got forwarded onto him. And so I had a conversation, and he's like, well, tell me more about you. And he's like, oh, I did see that email come through, but everyone's busy, so nobody has time to really sit and comb through it. And they're not going to be like, oh, wow, look at this guy or this girl. It's like, well, I got projects to do. So that happened. I got a job offer from them. We accepted it. I get out there, and I'm a month in, and they go, hey, we need your FE license ID number because we're working on some municipalities, and they require everyone to be an FE that works on the project. And I was like, oh, I don't have that. And they're like, oh, we thought you did have that. And I was like, no, it's not optional in the job description. And they're like, okay, well, you should get that by the end of the summer.
Wow.
So that summer was spent studying for the FE, and I did pass it. And yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So which coast did you end up on for that gig?
The West Coast.
The West Coast.
Portland, Oregon area, Nantucket.
Okay. And did you enjoy that? I mean,
oh yeah, loved it out there. Being close to the mountains, being close to the coast, having kind of a lush greenage, foliage all over the place. It was just like a brand new concept. So we flew out of the Midwest in the winter, brown, dead, ugly. We fly into Portland, and it's green and like lush, and you're like, whoa, there's moss on the ground, and what is happening? So yeah, it was beautiful out there.
That's crazy. And are you still on the coast, or are you back in the Midwest?
No, family health stuff with my parents brought us back. So we decided to move back, be close to family. And I think we're going to be settled up here in the Midwest for a while.
Awesome. So as a structural engineer, has there been a favorite project that you've worked on that you're like, I love what I'm doing? Or has it been a grind for you, or what's been the flavor?
I'm glad you had the alternative of it being a grind. Yeah, because it is, right? Even if you love what you do, you're still working.
Yeah, it's still a job, right? Career.
Parts that you don't love or that feels like a grind. My favorite project that was a grind. So a couple years out of school, still not quite to the project management level. I was tasked with being, the lead engineer under the supervision of the director in the structural department. A brand new elementary school, 68,000 square feet, $16 million job, ICC 500 storm shelter, all these pods, some clear stories, exposed steel, big deal. And he's like, you know what, Colten, like you've been doing really good. Go ahead. You can run with this. Go to the meetings, meet with the architects, get everything scheduled. I'll just coach you along the way. I was like, great, perfect. I'm a trial by fire kind of guy. That's my jam. Best way I learn. So I get in there, and we get done with SDs. We're into the design development phase, DD phase, and he announces that he is leaving the firm and he's going to go somewhere else. So we're all like, okay. And, he gives us, it's a month-ish. And after the month is gone, like that whole period, everyone's just, okay, who's taking this project? Who's taking this project? Who's taking this project? So I get tasked with just the project. That the other senior engineers are like, we'll help you as much as we can, but they're picking up the pieces from other major projects and issues. And so I basically become the lead on this huge project for me. That at the time it was like major. And I go and take it all the way through CEA. And, there's no major catastrophes. It's still standing today. And, lo and behold, that was like, oh man, like this is by far my favorite project, just because it became my baby. There's a lot of ownership over it, a lot of pride in the way it looked and the how much I learned from it. And so, yeah, got some scars, got some bruises.
Was it stressful when that project got laid on your lap like that?
Yeah, there was a sense of wanting to do really well, wanting to succeed, but not knowing where to go in a lot of directions, or feeling like I was being pulled in every direction and not knowing what the most important things were. And so it really did help me understand, hey, there are key things to be focused on, especially when time is limited. So 3D models are great. They're great for coordination, but that's not your deliverable. 2D sheets are. And so if your sheets look like crap, but you spend all your time in a 3D model, you've really just shot yourself in the foot. You're not delivering a 3D model. So that's one where it's like, oh yeah. And then analysis paralysis is another one where you can spend all your time getting the calcs to be, precision tight, but once you realize that something changed, or maybe there was a small mistake and you didn't leave any room for error, you have to spend time to go back and correct everything. So those two were like the big nuggets of, what's the most important thing for actually getting the project across the finish line, and how do you make sure that there's a little room and grace in the design, so that way you're not having to go back through and change things last minute.
Wow, that's so. It sounds like you learned a lot just going through that experience. So, one of those challenges that I see is that you also got thrown in also into more of a leadership type role if you're taking over a project like that. What's been your experience diving into more of a leadership role? I guess what do you see differently through engineering eyes that maybe you didn't see when you were starting?
It's become a lot more apparent since going off and starting something new myself. But I was always taught and thought of engineering as becoming the most technical is the best thing, and that's not a bad thing. And if you're geared that way and that's your passion is to be the best technically, then you're going to do very well for yourself. And there's a lot of space for those people to excel. I realized much earlier on in that I was much more interested in, okay, what does it look like to market yourself? What does it look like to get new clients? How do you actually find the work? What are the proposals looking like? How are you structuring fees? And so I naturally found myself going that direction of how are we structuring the work if we're saying it's going to be X amount of dollars and we have, Jane, Jill, and Jack, and their billable rates are X, Y, Z. How are we manipulating those to make sure that we're actually going to hit our fee and our schedule? And so getting to that level where I'm able to look at it from a more global perspective. And even now, looking at it as what's the status quo of the industry? Where are we operating out of? And then for me, how do you make it better? How am I able to go to a client and say, hey, this is the way it's been done, and this is the way I do it. And so even diagrammatically showing it with figures is something that's been really helpful. And I've had a bunch of client presentations where they've been like, whoa, these diagrams are awesome because I'm able to show the flow of the way that the owner has an idea and then the architect has to take it and they're going to feed the design team, and then the design team has to send it back to the architect, and then we're all in this BIM model, but we produce a 2D sheet of paper, and then that 2D sheet of paper makes its way to the contractor, and then it gets sent out to bid, and you got all these sub-consultants that are bidding on the project, but really they're going to produce 3D models to make 2D sheet. And so as you work your way through it, you're like, this is asinine. Who made this? And it's obviously a gross simplification of the process, but yeah, just trying to go through that exercise, you're like, wow, there's so many things we could improve or do better and provide better value to the clients that we serve.
Well, I'm curious, and I know you've chatted about this quite a bit on LinkedIn, but what are maybe one or two changes that you would change from the status quo? Because a oftentimes with structural engineering, it feels like it's a drive to the bottom. You're bidding on a job. Oftentimes clients want the cheapest price. And bidding on a job that, that ends up tying bill rates into that and driving salaries to be held at a certain level, when structural engineers seem like they take on the most risk when they're stamping a drawing that risks life, really. So I'm just curious, what are a couple changes that you see that maybe we could shake up in the industry? Maybe some of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I'll preface it as they are all thoughts and ideas. I'll call myself the ideas guy. I got lots of ideas, but I mean, realistically, what the trend is right now, like you said, it is a race to the bottom, in that it is partially driven by, having this tie between public and private sectors. There's shared exposure between the two. Public obviously wants to be the most economical with resources, and so a low bid makes the most sense from the public's perspective. They just have no idea what they're getting with the low bid. Mm-hmm. And so, as engineers become more creative, structural specifically, it's delegated connection design, delegated stair and railing. We're starting to move things out from underneath our initial scope. And with that, I mean, realistically, what it does is it increases schedule and cost, because more hands have to touch things and learn the information, design it, send it back for approval. So it's just, for me, it doesn't make any sense. But I know that a lot of people are using it as a way to continue to get work. And so what ends up happening, though, at least from what I've seen, is the work is moving itself out to the cheapest billable rates, which happen to be outside of the U.S. in a lot of areas, right? So you're going to outsource your
high efficiency groups.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and that is a solution to a very real problem, which is, how do we stay competitive but profitable? And that's one way. One of the tactics that I'm looking at is who my clients are. And so if I want to stick with, I'm always through an architect, and they're kind of the wall to the owner who has the money. There's just an exchange that has to happen before it gets to me. And so if I continue to pursue more industrial-based clients where I'm working directly with the owner, then you remove at least that, I won't call an architect a middleman, but you remove that one extra person in the middle. And whenever you're working directly with the owner, you now get to display, hey, whenever I do these things, which are different than what some other people are doing or the normal, this is what you save. This is how much time you save. This is how much money you save. And specifically, we're pursuing bringing some of the detailing and fabrication underneath our umbrella, just so that way it's already coordinated underneath one house before you send it out for fabrication. So you can get a much more accurate quote on what it's going to cost. Everything is coordinated up front. You're not having to, have an email chain between your fabricator and you on what was or wasn't modeled. And if there's heavy coordination, which industrial, there is always heavy coordination. That's been fully vetted. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned, but I've been playing around with a lot, is augmented reality.
Oh, yeah. I've seen your post about that, where you're walking around with some software and seeing what the building looks like before it's. Yeah, talk about that a little bit. What's the big benefit there for owners, for engineers?
Yeah, that one's been it's more of a side hobby passion at this point. But I spent 8 different softwares that I had to go through before I got one that I liked, and I had a project, overhead crane, that I had a client put the headset on. I had modeled it, and he walked around his building. He saw exactly what it was going to look like from a wireframe view. And he noticed that there was a forklift that was running through the traffic where the overhead crane was going to be. And the forklift ran right through the imaginary beam because of miscommunication on how high the forklift was able to go. So that was he was like, oh, like, that doesn't look good. And we were like, this is why we do these things.
You can see the problem.
Yeah. It's just, it's QA QC at a much higher level. Owners are, as the client provider, as a client that you're providing service to, you're able to get buy off in a way that, is much different than a 2D model review or flat paper. Whenever you're able to walk them around and say, this is your thing. And they're like, okay, I love this. I don't like that. Change this. Just the ownership that they have over it and the likelihood of issues later down the road go away.
It's awesome. And I know we chatted about this a little bit before, but AI in the industry as well. Where do you see that going with engineering?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pro version of ChatGPT, and I played around with it. In my mind, I think once there's the first couple of lawsuits get settled from something happening, right, and everyone gets an idea of what the actual risk is involved, code specific bots, chat bots, and then material specific chat bots. I think those two are coming down the line. I would say for, in your world, the FEPE, SE exams, I think they have chatbots for each of those, tutor or somebody that you can, ping with questions. And I'm really excited for that opportunity just because, it won't be a one-on-one experience, but it'll be the closest thing you can get to that scales to a one-on-one experience. And so if you are able to set your bots up correctly with how to teach people rather than to just give answers, I think that will really help a lot of people learn.
Yeah, I think obviously it's here. It's an exciting future for us to see stuff developed as tools that we use in the industry and everything else going on. So that's awesome input. Well, I wanted to ask you, going on your own, what was that process like for you? What was the mindset to jump out and say, I want to go do this myself? What challenges have you faced? What tips would you give to someone wanting to do the same thing?
Yeah. So I will clarify it. For me, it's a unique situation. It's a bit more like a startup than like a solopreneur. Mm-hmm. So I have a leadership team and I have owners who are funding this adventure. They tapped me on the shoulder and they said, hey, we love what you're doing. We know what you're about. And get this, just the power of networking in general. But one of them had been following me on LinkedIn, obviously LinkedIn stalking me for a year. And because I was consistent, because I was just being myself and posting the things that I'm passionate about, he messaged me and said, hey, you are the guy that I'm looking for to do this. Are you interested in that? And I said, no, it's not a good time. I'm busy with other stuff. And then a year later, we're like, okay, let's talk about this. And it was 2 lunches that were an hour long, and it was all but settled after that because he had already had a year's worth of who I was to verify that this was a good choice.
Wow, that's awesome. So that sounded like an easier transition than doing a solo thing.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, to have to self-fund all this, it just limits your ability to grow up front. You're really fighting tooth and nail. You're not able to hire or have help as readily available. The way that you present yourself or look and you're able to market changes, so I've been very blessed and I'm grateful that I have resources to spend up front to showcase the way that we want to show. Like, we were very intentional, and I've even turned away jobs because we've chosen that that's not a best fit client. We're not able to do that job well. And so, that transparency is one of the core values for flight engineering. And it's like, I'll shoot you straight. Like, I'm not going to do a concrete building because I don't do that. It's just not what I do. I'm going to be in, steel. I'm going to do concrete foundations, masonry, wood. But in steel is really the one where I'm most focused in because I feel like we can have the biggest impact and, mixing things up in the way that it's been done. So Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just understanding what to focus on is key.
Okay.
And
Well, maybe at a higher level then, if there's somebody out there that's looking at making a transition to another job or changing it up, what advice would you give to them? Was it sometimes you hear engineers chasing a dollar, maybe it's not the best fit or things of that nature. How did you know this was a good fit? It sounded like 2 lunches did it for you, but would there be any tips or advice for engineers that are looking to change positions, upgrade their life, whatever it is? What tips would you share with them?
yeah, it for me, it was understanding where I wanted to be in 5 to 10 years. And I realized that I did not want to be the technical expert in whatever. My focus and my passion at this most recent juncture has been on entrepreneurship, wanting to understand better about how a business operates and functions, wanting to grow and being able to market and then obtain new clients. For example, like I'd always heard of a CRM system, client relationship management system, but never even no firm I've ever worked at have I seen it used or operational in any capacity. And so for me, like doing this, it's like I guess I'm going to use HubSpot. Just like even starting that process of tracking clients and interactions and touch points. It's become so much more than just the technical, and that to me has been great, getting to explore and look at it from a high level. How do you make a proposition of value to your client that's unique?
That's awesome. Maybe these last few minutes I have with you, let's dive into PE for free. What was the inspiration behind that you started, and what's it all about?
Yeah, PE for free was my attempt to get outside of my comfort zone. At its core, like I still remember not trying to decide if I wanted to do a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, and I finally found Anchor.fm, which no longer exists. I think it's Spotify for podcasters or something. And I kid you not, my first episode was like me holding my phone and me just going, okay, this is episode 1, Colten. It was just such a low barrier to entry that it made sense. And 2 things that I realized. One, it's so much more difficult to produce content that is, up to the level that is currently the standard. Like you really have to know your stuff. And so I got so many blind spots opened up to me, because as you start to try to produce content, you realize, oh, I really don't know that very well. Or like, I want to talk about this thing, and so through that, I kind of found my niche, which would just be helping young engineers thrive in the industry, getting started, whether that's licensing exams is a big one, just because I went through a lot of that and just documented. Like for my PE exam, I recorded all of my study sessions on the iPad. Like I took all my notes on the iPad. I did all my studying on the iPad. If I would record it, I did all webcam. So I have all of that logged as history. And then as I was going through that, it was just like,
that's a lot.
I feed people, that. And so that was the inspiration for it. And unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of time to get back into it since starting Flint, but it will definitely pick back up, I think, once things balance out, or I hire somebody to do editing.
There you go. That's what I had to do. Exactly. Well, Colten, this has been awesome. I appreciate you jumping on and sharing your wisdom, everything you've got going on in your life, job transitions, leadership roles that you've had. You post a lot on LinkedIn. I'm going to point people. I guess that's probably the best way to get a hold of you if people have questions about passing the PE or anything structural they want to follow in your footsteps or whatnot. Is that the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way to do that. And I've slowed down a little bit, but hopefully we'll ramp it back up and get after it. And anybody that's on LinkedIn, you should be posting and commenting good questions on people's posts. That's definitely the 2 recommendations I have.
And you recommend that for networking and getting yourself out there, or other reasons?
One is networking. You don't understand networking. Let's see. Sol Rosenbaum is a good contact who has an analogy of like networking is similar to, I'm totally blanking on it. I just had it. It is gone. But the magic of editing, this could be taken out if needed. But it's only helpful if you have it built up over time. You need to have that backlog of people who trust you and know what you're about, rather than, you needing a job or an opportunity and you just pinging people and you've only met them once or like been connected for a little bit.
Yeah, it leaves almost like this digital footprint behind where people they see what's going on, it might be a comment here or there, but if you're ready to make a transition, those people know you almost because they've seen what you've been doing. So yeah, those are great tips about LinkedIn. Well, Colten, thanks for doing this. Is there any other last piece of advice you would share with our audience?
I would say communication is key. So get really good at it and continue to practice it. And I think, posting on LinkedIn or starting a podcast or just doing something outside your comfort zone is the best way to grow yourself to that next level.
Perfect. Colten, thanks for doing this. It's been a pleasure. And we'll chat with you on another one probably.
Yeah, appreciate it, Isaac. Thanks.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.